Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Decryption and I hope you are well. In the last few tutorials we've been working on our own race controller to create a racing minigame. We can start the game and we can either take part or just tell the AI to run, and it'll prompt us to arrive at the location. Upon arriving we will wait for the other NPCs and then the countdown will begin and we will be able to start the race. And at each point, as we run around and hit it, we can eventually win the race. However, last tutorial we unlocked a few bugs when adding the player into it, and we've got some more things to do to make it more performant. So let's get started. So we've got a few things we're going to look at in this tutorial, mainly looking around the bug fix. The first thing we're going to look at is the player's rotation, which is an issue we found last time. If we start the race backwards from the direction and run to it, it'll freeze our input and we can't do anything, we can't go anywhere. And we really need to make it look around because the countdown has started and we can't do anything, we're facing the wrong way. So we just want it to basically stop the player where they are and smoothly rotate them to face the right way. And this could go for all of the NPCs as well. If we, for example, move this NPC over here and then start the race, as they walk towards it, he will just stand there facing backwards as well. Now the problem is when you're handling rotations, you typically lerp them to translate them smoothly between one rotation to another rotation. But that involves storing the before rotation and the new rotation. So it means when we arrive at the starting area, we've got to loop over all the players on here, because don't forget we're building this so it semi-works for a multiplayer game. And then we're going to have to store each character with the rotation that they started at, the rotation they need to be at, and the controls rotation so we can rotate the camera. That's 3 rotations per character, and then we've got to do the same for the NPCs as well. That's quite a lot. So what we're going to do instead of storing all of this in here, or even storing it on the struct because it's just going to remain there doing nothing, we're going to create a reusable component we can use later in the game. And with this reusable component, we're going to be able to basically place it on any actor, really, but we'll aim it for characters and pawns, and we can pass in the details of where you need to rotate to. It will handle the rotations, then destroy itself. So we basically place it on, have it take up the memory, run the lerping that it needs to, and then disappear again, freeing up the memory. Really efficient. So let's go to our content drawer, and inside our blueprints folder, I'm going to go into my components folder. I'm going to simply right click, blueprint, class, and I'm going to select actor component. I'll call this AC for actor component underscore smooth look at. I'm going to open it up. Inside here, I'm just going to click open full blueprint editor. And then on event begin play, this is where we can start handling the rotation. In order to get the actor that we need to rotate, we can just use get owner. Since this is a component, this will give us the actor that owns the component. The first thing we're going to do is get the actor's rotation, and we're going to cache this in a variable. So I'll promote it to a variable called starting rotation. And we need this as we update each frame or timeline. We need to know what the starting point was. Next, we actually need to get which rotation we need to look at. So what I'm going to do is simply create a new variable in here called look at location. And I'm going to set this to a vector. And then I'm going to make it instance editable by clicking the eyeball and ticking expose on spawn in the details. This means when we spawn this component, we can pass in that data. Next, if you're using this to rotate a character, we're going to want to get their control rotation. This is how you control the camera and override players' controls. So what I'm going to do is add a boolean, set control rotation, and I'll do the same instance editable and expose on spawn. I'll then check it on event begin play if we want to capture the control rotation. Because if you're using this for a standard actor, like a box or a chest, you might not want to use the control rotation. And then, only if it's true, we're going to cast this to a type of character, to a type of pawn, which is a base Unreal class, so it's okay to cast to. And this allows us to get the controller And then we can get the control rotation, and we can promote this to a variable called starting control rotation. The two starting ones, they are just private variables. We don't need to worry about those. So I will just add them to a private category so we don't deal with them. And I'll connect the cast to it. And now that we have the event begin play setting up our variables, so now you might be wondering, how do we go about rotating them? Because normally we'd use a timeline, but we can't add a timeline in a component. This is one of the rare times that using the tick function is exactly what it's for. So we're going to search for the event tick function, and we're going to build our own rotation function inside this tick. So we basically put the component on an actor, pass it all its details, it rotates the actor, and then destroys the component, stopping the tick. For a performance boost, what we're first going to do is go to class defaults and just make sure start with tick enabled is deactivated. And that will basically mean this tick function isn't going to run until we specifically tell it to. So it will be, after we've captured the starting rotation, we can then come off the false and set tick enabled. And we can also do it on the cast failed if we can't cast to a pawn. And we'll also do it on the control rotation like so. So if we're not using control rotation, the tick will start to rotate the basic. If we cast to a pawn but we've accidentally told it to use a control rotation on an actor that isn't a pawn, it will still rotate, but it will ignore the control rotation. Otherwise, if it gets everything else, it will run the control rotation. One slight change I will make, however, is if it is cast failed, I am just going to set the control rotation back to false, like so. We can print out a string as an error, so I'll just do print. I'll drag backwards and just do format text, and I'll do curly brace, name, close curly brace, is not a pawn. And don't worry, if it's a type of character, it will still cast to a pawn. And then you'll see it'll ask us for a name. We can just get the owner, paste it down here, and connect it to name, get the owner, drag off and do get display name, and connect it to it. So that'll give us a very nice error saying chess stopperlith is not a pawn. You know, if you've got a chest, what is just an actor. And now that we've set the tick enabled, we can start building the rotation function. It's super easy to do. So we're just going to create a function to handle what our current lerp alpha is. So I will do rotation alpha, and I'll set this to a float. This again will be a private variable. And the first thing we'll do is we will set this to our delta seconds divided by how long we want the rotation to last. So I'll promote this to a variable called rotation duration. I will make this instance editable and exposed on spawn. But I will also tick it and just give it a default and say 1 second, just so we don't have to set it every time. I'll also do it for set control rotation to true, because in my case, I'll mainly use this on characters. Just to make sure we don't glitch anything out, I'm just going to clamp this division here. So I'll do clamp float, and I'll connect it up, and I'll say it's between 0 and 1. This just stops it getting away with us and rotating infinitely. So we can definitely presume when it's finished. And then we can get the owner again, and then we can drag off and do set actor rotation. And we can connect this to the set here. For the new rotation, we will just drag off and do lerp. I will tick shortest path, just meaning it doesn't do that weird curve thing where it goes backwards. I'll set the alpha to our rotation alpha that we've just set. For the A is going to be our starting rotation, so we'll get that and connect that straight into it. However, for B, I'm actually going to right click and split it because we only want to change the Z-axis. Otherwise, you may have it that they start leaning towards the lookout like that, and we don't want that. We want them to just rotate on the Z-axis. So in order to get the Z rotation that we need, I'm actually going to take the lookout location and back up on the main big event begin play up top. I'm actually going to bring all of the control part across, and inside here I'm going to get the lookout location. I'm going to drag off and do find lookout rotation, and this will give us what we're actually wanting the rotations to be. So we can connect the lookout location to the target because that's what we want to look at, and the starting rotation is actually just going to be our owner's location. So I'll paste the get owner in, get actor location, and it will give us the perfect rotation that we need to look at it. I will promote this to a variable look at rotation, and I'll just make this private because we don't want to pass this one in. We've already passed the location into it, and we'll connect this back up over here. I'll just wrap this in a comment just so we actually know what's going off, called get look at rotation. And then back down on our tick function down here, I can just drag in the look at rotation. I can break this and connect the Z to it like so. You very well may want to actually have the X and Y if you want characters to look up. You could build alternative booleans into that if you want. And then after this, I'm just going to come and add a branch here and check if we are setting the control rotation, which we've already catered for above in case it fails. If we are, then we want to set the control rotation. So one more variable I'm going to store, since this is a temporary component, is the actual controller. So I'll drag this up, promote to variable, and I will call it pawns controller. I'll make this a private variable again. And for those who don't know, all a private variable means is it means other components can't access it. Technically, I am supposed to be ticking the private option here as well. And all this means is nothing from the outside can access these values. Only this blueprint alone can access it. It's a good way of managing things and keeping a lid on top of things. We don't want things coming in changing the starting rotations whilst it's running. It will break things. Now I have it back in the tick function. I can get the controller and I can do set control rotation. And since this is a camera, we can actually just plug the look at rotation almost directly into it after a lerp, because a camera can look up and down as well as spinning around. So for the look at rotation, we'll plug it into the B. For the alpha will be our rotation alpha, the shortest path again, and the A is our starting control. Now that, for the most part, will work, and it will rotate the pawn and it will rotate the camera. But what we also want to do is check for when it's finished. So underneath the tick function, I'm going to add another custom event called check finish. And in here, I will just say, is the rotation duration more than or equal to 1? It should only ever be less than 1 or 1, because the clamp should keep it, but this is just a good check as well. And if it is more than 1, then we can just simply come and do destroy component. You don't have to destroy it if you want to. It's a bit more memory efficient because we're not going to be rotating them all the time. And then it means all of these variables are freed up in memory. And just one last little thing I forgot. Just set the rotation duration to rotation alpha on the check finish. The duration we don't want to check. We want to check if the alpha's done it. And then just on our tick, on the false, before we actually set the controls rotation, I'll make some space and just call our check finish. But also, if we do change the control rotation, I will also call check. And one other minor mistake I've made is instead of setting the rotation alpha, before we set it, we just need to actually add on the original rotation alpha as well, like so. So we take the delta seconds, we divide it by how long we want the rotation to last, and then we add it to the existing rotation alpha before clamping it and setting it, meaning everything else will run at the new rotation alpha. So it's now time for us to implement this component super easily. Let's jump back to our BP race controller. We'll start with the player. So when the player arrives at the starting area, which is the event we created last time, it gets their controller, casts it to a player controller, disables their input. One thing you will have noticed is they kept running as well until they ran out of velocity, which I don't want. So I'm just going to make some space over here, clean this code up a little bit. And then I will get the character here. And then I will simply do set movement mode on the character movement component. We may need some more space. And I'll just set it to none. We just need to make sure we set it back to movement when they are allowed to run. So we'll just copy this. Racers start running. It loops over all of our racers. If it's a player-based racer, then it will enable their input, but more specifically, we will set them back to walking because I don't use Unreal's modes. I don't actually know anybody who uses Unreal's modes, and then we'll connect it to the character again, like so. So that should hopefully stop them running as well. You may notice they may keep running even past just setting their movement mode. If they do, just come back to where you disable it And on their character movement, just also do stop movement immediately. And it will basically cancel out their velocity. It might look a bit jarring, but we can test that. And then after this, we can now get them to rotate to the correct place. And now we can add this component to the player. It's probably going to be better added to the character. So just before we destroy the trigger sphere, what starts it, I will just take the character and do add component by class. Connect this up. The component we want is going to be our AC smooth look at. And you'll notice it will expand and give us all the options that we want, which is perfect. So the look at rotation that we need is actually our starting waypoint. So I'm just going to grab our starting patrol point and do get next patrol point. We are going forwards around it, and then I can connect this up like. And then the patrol point I will drag off and do get actor location. So this will give us the starting rotation of the patrol point that's after the starting one. So what I mean by that, after I've just tidied the code up a bit, is when we start the race, the first patrol point is technically this one, because that's the first patrol point you go to and the one that finishes. The second one, or the next one, is this one here. So the starting one is this one, and we're just telling it to get the next one. You can see that, but if we click starting patrol point, it will select that one there. And now that we've added it, and we've set the control rotation, we can actually just compile and try it out now. So if we try it this time, you'll notice if we run to the opposite side of the race, Shift F1 to start the race controller, we'll run to it, and you'll notice the player will smoothly rotate around facing the right location. You can absolutely play with it, and depending on what system you use for your characters, you can make the rotations really smooth. So for example, if I come back to my race controller, and where I add the component, if I set it something like 1.5 or 2, hit compile and save, if I start it this time, a longer duration will make it feel more realistic, as you can see. And we just wait for the final one to approach, and once they all rotate, it will look really, really nice. But we're perfectly in the right way to start running. So let's add it to the NPCs as well. So back on the race controller, we'll basically just take this chunk of code here, and on the event on go to location finished event, which is when the NPCs run to the place, to the starting and finish line, I'm just going to make a bit of space just before we start checking if everybody's ready. I will paste in our new block of code, and I'll paste it into position. And then for the character, I'm just going to get this character here and make some nice, like so. We'll set it to the exact same thing and just drag it across and make sure to continue the checking there. So we'll just wrap this in a comment, check if everyone is ready. And then for this one, we'll wrap it in a comment, rotate actor. And if we hit compile and save this time, you should now see that all actors, no matter where they come from, will all face the right direction. So if we run to the opposite side and just test it from this way, start the race, we walk in, the player will just smoothly rotate to the right place. And you can see, so do all the characters. So everybody is ready to run to the correct place. How cool is that, ladies and gentlemen? So the next thing we discussed in the previous tutorial was the light beams that we used to start the race. It's very, very weak, and that's just a me problem and a Synty problem. But if you're using the same packs as me, you're most likely going to want to do the same thing too. So you'll see when it fades in, it's very weak that you can barely see it until it's like at least 3 to 5 seconds in. The others are okay, but it's still not great. So it's a super quick fix to handle this. All we're going to do is come and open the NS God Ray current destination that we set up and duplicated last time. Inside here, it's got a material that it uses to handle the sunbeams, which is part of my Ancient Egypt pack I'm using. All I'm going to do is open that and just change the opacity to something smaller, like 0.5. And you can try it without and start the game by just coming to the God Ray, and you'll see if you drag it from 0 upwards, you'll see that it will get brighter quicker than it did. I want it to be almost visible at like half a second's notice of it being spawned. So I'm actually going to set the opacity to something even smaller, like 0.6 something even larger like 0.9. We'll hit apply, and you'll see around 0.5 to 1, it's already visible. So if we try it this time, you should see this time when it does spawn in, it will be visible a lot quicker. There we go, far quicker, and it looks the same, but it's so much nicer. One other bug that we had last time that you may or may not have noticed is the triggers that we use sometimes actually re-trigger themselves. So what I mean by this is if you come into your TSPA Racing Minigame, which is the trigger we spawn for the player, if you go to the base class of Trigger Sphere Player Arrival here, we used it to determine when a player's arrived at the starting point or if they've hit a waypoint. If you just print out here saying player has hit, or play has hit apparently, and you start the game, you will notice that at first it's okay, but then it quickly goes to double spawning itself. So you can see players hit because we've hit the starting, that's okay. I'll let these guys run forwards just to show that it's not that. So they're going to run, and you'll see it won't show that trigger, so that's perfectly fine. But if I run to it, it's printed twice. How come? And it's the same if I run to any of them twice. It's always printing twice. Sometimes you can get 3 or 4 as well. And what this is something really weird down to Unreal's frames and how it determines collision. So when we're hitting the collision here, so say this guy here, we hit it, we're moving that collision to somewhere else in the code. But there is a chance that Unreal, as it moves it, it can re-trigger itself to tell it that it's spawned again. It'll basically overlap itself multiple times. If you've got a low FPS, you will actually see more of these spawn up. So what we need to do is tell Unreal that once we hit it, stop tracking that actor, move it to its new location, and then re-enable it. And it all comes down to being in the same frame of when Unreal calculates the collision detection for the overlaps and when we move it. So you could very well move it after the players hit it, which is what we do, but it's not always going to be enough. So it's a super easy fix. Back on the Trigger Sphere Arrival here, we'll keep the play was hit for now. And all we're going to do is come and set actor enable collision, and we will untick it. So it disables the collision. So after you run to the first one, it won't work. For the first one, the arrival, we destroy it anyway, so it's not a big issue. So that won't be ignored. But for each waypoint, inside our player arrived at patrol point, we actually, inside the spawn player's marker function, we only spawn this once. And then we just reuse it above. Right here, we move the trigger to a new location each time. So it's not like we can destroy it and keep reusing it. But that's completely okay because it's a super easy fix. So back on the event graph here, on the player arrived at patrol point, we're already finding the player's character here and we've already got the arrival trigger here. If you can't see it, just click your brake and enable it here. So what I'm going to do is after this is I'm just going to delay by frames, which is different to timing. And I'm just going to say, give Unreal a single frame to update itself. That means during the same frame cycle, it's not got chance to redetect the collision because the spawn player markers moves it. And as you already know, we've already disabled it here. So the collision, even though it's not moved in the same frame, can't be re-overlapped. And the delay frames gives us that 1 frame gap. You'll not notice a frame. And then on the arrival trigger, we can just drag off and simply do set actor collision enabled and retick it. So this time you should see the print statement, but only once. So if we start it this time, start race with player, you can see we can run to the location. Play was hit, that did it once because it destroys itself, that's fine. And then when this actor moves into the right location, 3, 2, 1, go. And you can see as we run up, it will only ever print play was hit once. And because Unreal's got that single frame to be able to move it, it's not re-triggering for us. You'll see this a lot for dialogue as well. People using narrative for dialogue, they'll often just stick a sphere in there and it will try to trigger the dialogue multiple times and they'll say it's a little bit jarring at first. It's the same principle. It's been overlapped multiple times. So just double check your overlaps for that. So I'm going to leave this tutorial here just for the race controller part. We've fixed a lot of bugs and made it look very nice. There is one major bug that we need to look at, and that is the player's use of shortcuts. At the moment, we just tell it to get the next patrol point's location, which in this case is here. But on this one, you've actually got 2 locations. You can go either way. What the code is set up to do is just randomly pick one. That's why you'll see the marker appear at one of the sides. What we need to do is pick a random place to show the marker, but make both areas completely acceptable to run through. So we need to adapt our trigger sphere spawning code to actually spawn multiple, depending on where you're going with it. But we're going to do it in a really efficient way, and we'll pool it so we won't just destroy them all and recreate them each time, because we know we're always going to have at least one. And then doing this and giving us the trigger places here will make it a lot easier to determine when the player's finished the race as well. So thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this was helpful. If you've got any other tips for this, please let me know. We're just going to finish off the spawning for the player so they can actively take part, and then we'll start looking at adding some UI, some usages in an actual game with a story and some rewards. Thank you for watching. I hoped it helped. If you've got any other suggestions, please let me know. My name is Decryption, and I will see you next time.